Hey, what's up, haters? Welcome back. Live portion of the fitness training every Sunday, 12 Eastern time. Welcome back. Today we're talking about peak week, how to navigate peak week. We got a lot of competitors. Competition season just kicked off. Excuse me. So, a lot of people coming up on peak week, wondering what to expect. Stay tuned. We're about to tell you.
Yeah, I really wanted to do this video. We've got two clients in particular that are about 2 weeks off, so they are really close to their peak weeks. And I start to kind of tell them all the things they can expect, but it's a lot. And so we figured if this information would be helpful for them, it's probably helpful for everyone else out there getting ready to compete.
100%.
So the definition of peak week from our perspective is that time frame anywhere from 7 to 10 days leading up to the competition, right? So this is that critical period where the athlete, all that hard work that they've done, however long it may be, their entire off season, they are dialing it in, they're adjusting their nutrition, their training, and a bunch of other factors.
It's the whole year.
Yeah, to have that, best physique on stage, that nice, crisp, full muscles, tightness, and just optimal physique on stage. That's the definition of peak week, and it is a process.
Absolutely. That's why it's called peaking. You peak right at a competition day, or you should peak right on your competition date.
It's a little, so for some athletes, we'll just get right into it. That's a little depressing to think of it that way. I mean, you might have been working for 11, 12 months, I don't know, in off season, trying to build up something, and you're literally trying to peak and have the perfect physique for 1 week in time, 1 day in time, really.
I'm going to agree with that, but I'm going to tell you the depression's not going to come until after the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the post-show depression. So you worked your whole entire year, focus, one date, boom, one competition, right. Boom. Win, lose, or draw. After that competition, you're going to go through some mental stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and plus you've seen your physique in the most optimal conditioning possible. So anything after that is just, it's not the same, right? And you can't sustain it. But in any case, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So typically for an athlete, when we talk about what are the goals for peak week, there's 3 things that come to mind. One is muscle fullness. Right? They want to achieve this optimal amount of muscle fullness to have this big developed look on stage.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, it's the opposite of flat.
Yeah.
You don't want to go on stage looking flat. And we're going to get into that in a minute.
Yeah, you want those nice 3-dimensional looking muscles. The next thing is you want some type of muscle definition. Depending on which division you're competing in, there's different degrees of muscle definition. Yeah. You start at bikini or men's physique. It's a little softer of a look, a look that's maybe more achievable by the masses of people. And then you get all the way up to bodybuilding. It's a very hard, aggressive, defined look, very extreme.
Listen, y'all, if you're not defined on peak week, you're not competing that week. That ain't your peak week. You missed.
And then the last thing that's a goal that comes to mind when I think of peak week is precision, y'all. And anyone that's done competitions, that word's probably like, yeah, you're right. Like you were really trying to be as precise as you can with the nutrition, the water, the intake, the supplements. Everything's dialed in to perfection.
Glad you said it. Also known as dialing in. Just like Camille ended it, dialing it in.
And so I, like to talk about this topic because it's not only a physical change that you're going to experience during your peak week, it's very much so an emotional change that you're going to experience.
Mental and emotional.
I think emotionally athletes during their peak week are pretty fragile. They might come across really excited because they're finally getting to show date but they're kind of a nervous mess underneath all of that, hard exterior.
100%. I mean, you get first timers coming in, starting their prep 16 weeks out, day 1, minute 1, asking about peak week. And you're going, what are you even thinking about peak week right now for? You're 16 weeks out.
Right.
But that's the hype around peak week. And that's part of the mental and emotional stuff that comes with it. Anybody expecting any magic on peak week is not ready.
Right.
There is no magic on peak. Can you dial in 100%? Can you lose your last bit of fat? 100%. Can you lose 5 pounds of fat? No freaking way. So if you're 5 pounds off, go ahead and pick a different show because you're not going to make it.
Right. So let's get into some peaking strategies, because I think as we start going through that, we'll talk more of like how the body is changing perhaps, or how your mental state's changing.
How it affects you, sure.
Yeah. So usually there's two kind of common practices in terms of peak week strategy. There's one that would be called a front load. This is where the coach is probably going to put a whole lot of carbs in your plan. And the idea is to really consume that high amount of carbs to get that glycogen into your muscles to make them look full, right? And then as the week goes on, the carbs lower until you get to show day. Some coaches might put like a slight carb up back in like Thursday, Friday, but only if they need to, right? The idea with the front load is carbs are really high. I don't know where my hand is. And then they taper down low at the end of the week.
Right. So front load, you load in the front of the week. So it'd be Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. You're loading up your carbs.
Right. So this strategy.
Well, let's back up. Before you do a carb load, you got to carb deplete. So if you're doing a front load, you're carb depleting before peak week, and then you do your front load Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of peak week.
Right. So I think this one's a bit challenging for athletes. Sometimes just consuming the carbs, they can actually what's called spillage. So basically they filled their muscles full of that glycogen, full of those carbs, and then they keep eating the carbs, but there's nowhere for that glycogen to go. Like your muscle cells are just completely filled. And at that point, it's going to move to the liver. When the liver can't hold it anymore, it spills to in between the skin and it stores it.
It's called blurring.
Right.
Get a little blurred.
So remember goal number 2, right, was for that muscle definition, that like nice defined look. Yep. So with the front load, if you do it wrong and you eat too many carbs, all of a sudden you're looking blurry. But let's back up a little bit, right? So you're kind of dieting along the whole time. You know, your carbs are probably getting less and less. Calories are getting less and less. And now coach is like, all right, it's time to do the deplete. You're like,
I'm already depleted.
Like, I'm already depleted. What do you mean I'm going down to like next to nothing in carbs? Like, you know, the athlete's already almost at a breaking point, and this is usually like the straw that hit the camel's back. They're like, I already can't function at work. I already just can't hang out with my spouse and my kids. And now you're taking away my energy source, my last little bit of carbohydrates that I've been eating. And I got to do this for like 3-4 days.
We are selling this bodybuilding. Eating, girl. Ooh, we're making it sound good.
And then I try to explain, you know, to the athlete, it's only a small, you know, duration. You're going to ramp those carbs like way up. You know, you can get through this. It's part of the process. You just have to trust me. But it's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot for them to process.
And this brings up a couple very good points. As a coach, you need to know your athletes. If you don't have a coach, you need to know yourself.
Right. Know
when you should do your load, front load, back load. We haven't got to that yet. But the anguish that comes with it. Great example. Miguel just competed in Philadelphia Classic. We didn't cut his carbs until peak week. My man was stage lean before peak week and lost another 7 pounds on peak week from carb depleting them and then carbing them back up.
Yeah.
So he's already freaking lean. He's already depleted. And then he dropped another 7 pounds. Imagine what's going on in his mind. Man, I'm getting small. I'm getting small. I'm getting small. And we all go through this peak week, myself included. This is part of the mental anguish. And this is what you're going to hear a million times. Trust the process.
Right.
Over the years, I've lost 2 or 3 competitors during peak week who just couldn't carb deplete because they mentally messed themselves up.
Right.
And then show up the next day for posing practice and say, Coach, I'm sorry I had to eat carbs. Well, you just ruined your whole peak week strategy, brother.
Yeah. So the idea with the carb depleting before you go into your front load or back load is we want to pull the water out of the muscles, out of the skin, and then we want to strategically put it back in.
Correct.
So it's in the muscle, not under the skin. Because remember, water under the skin looks blurry.
Yes.
We want to fill out those muscles, get that fullness, get that definition. So, water's always going to follow the carbs. It's going to follow some other things too. We'll get to that. But water's definitely going to follow the glycogen. It's going to follow the carbs. So we pull it all out.
Should we talk about cutting water? Because that's a serious
No, we're not.
Later?
It's later.
Okay.
All right. So just remember, no matter what kind of load you're going to do, coach is probably going to want to deplete you. And during that process, yes, you are literally going to see your muscles turn flat. You're going to lose kind of that volume, that size.
The flat look we were talking about earlier.
And you're going to look worse. Yes. You're going to look worse before you look better.
Yep.
And you're going to keep coming to them and being like, oh my God, coach, I haven't looked this bad the entire prep. What is going on? Yep. It is part of the process. So just trust them.
This is what makes peak week mentally and emotionally hard.
Yes.
Physically, peak week is probably one of your easiest weeks. But mentally and emotionally, boy, you're looking in the mirror going, it's peak week and I'm looking worse. What the frick is going on here?
All right, so back to the strategy. So there was the front load. So after that deplete stage, your coach is going to, bam, shoot those carbs up.
Front load.
Really high on the front load.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Right.
Maybe Wednesday.
Yeah, and then it's going to taper down. So the next thing that you're feeling on that front load is
bloated and fat.
I'm bloated and I'm fat. My gut's distended. Oh my God, coach. I look bad again.
Mm-hmm.
I look even worse. But give it some time, give it some days, let that glycogen fill into your muscles. All of a sudden, by Wednesday, Thursday, you're looking more full, you're looking more defined, you're looking good. All right. Backload's kind of similar. It, you start off a little different, you carb deplete, right? And then we're going to ramp carbs up slowly till we get to show day. Some coaches will do a cleanup day. They'll ramp you up in such a way where you slightly spill over and then they'll drop those carbs. So you're dialed in for show day.
More like a mid load. Back load would be Thursday, Friday. And then you have Saturday morning to add more carbs, but you can't have spillage on a back load because there's no time to lose that spillage.
Right. So I always say that a backload's a more extreme look. So your classic physique, women's physique, bodybuilding, you're usually a lot harder and more defined. But I definitely would not do a backload if you're someone that did need to lose slightly more weight. I mean, and remember what James said to start with. If you got 5 pounds or more to lose, maybe pick a different show. But if you just had maybe a couple to lose, I definitely wouldn't do a backload. The chances of spilling over would be pretty high.
And this, again, you have to know your body, or your coach does. So for my athletes, especially my first timers, I will peak them early and then we'll practice peak weeks leading up. So I know which strategy works best for the client, a front load, a mid load, or a back load. And then that's what we roll into peak week with. If it's a second time client, I use whatever they use the first one because we figured out their body, we figured out how it works, and we stick with that peak week strategy.
Absolutely. So the next thing that, we should talk about is water. There's a huge myth out there. I mean, you hear clients water loading, then cutting water.
Oh my goodness.
And then they are just totally sucking come show day and they don't look good.
If your coach is telling you to water load and then cut water, fire your coach. There's no cutting water. Your muscles are 75% water. We don't want to cut water. We want to manipulate it.
Yeah. And water's not the enemy, y'all.
No, we want the water.
What's the enemy is where is the water in the body?
You got it.
Again, is it under the skin or is it in the muscle? And there is absolutely a way to manipulate where that water goes.
Yes,
and that carb loading is a huge part of it.
Yep.
The other part of that is the balance between the sodium and potassium. I'm not going to get into it.
Not going to give you the secret sauce here today.
I will tell you though, there's a book, this book right here, you can find it on Amazon. Yep. The authors are truly, truly incredible. I mean, Peter down here, he's fantastic. And they actually go through that and they'll go through, I think 4 or 5 different peak strategies and who should do them. So if you're new to bodybuilding and you have questions and you don't have a coach or something, or you want to make sure you understand what your coach is telling you, this book right here, available on Amazon, it's a gem.
Listen, y'all, I wouldn't recommend anything that I don't believe in. This is the best peak week competition book I've ever read that's ever been written, and I've read a million of them. This is the best one ever written for natties and not natties. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Both apply. It's worth the money.
Yeah, and it takes a lot to impress both of us. And I think what impressed me the most was Peter and Cliff were able to explain the science of what me and James had known for years.
Yep.
Like for the first time, we could actually apply the science behind what we were already doing with our peaking. Because James and I, we had never cut water in our preps, never. Like we always left it in, and there was just like revelations throughout the years that we would have on how to dial that physique in. Well, Cliff and Peter do a really good job of explaining exactly why that made sense all those years.
Yeah, and they write it. Good point. In a way everybody can understand. They don't over science it, so you're lost in the sauce somewhere.
Right. All right. So we talked a little bit about like the nutrition, the water, the peaking, but like workouts is a whole nother aspect. So this whole time leading to peak week, you're doing these grueling, really intense workouts. So you're full throttle ahead, trying to make and keep those gains. And then all of a sudden come peak week, coach is like, time to pump your brakes. And you're like, what do you mean? Full throttle to the stage, let's go. And they're like, no, pump those brakes.
And you're excited and you're ready. And now the adrenaline's going because you're close enough to the competition. Now you're ready to roll.
Yeah. So more than likely what coach is going to say is, hey, starting that, Saturday before peak week, we're no longer training legs. Like that would be like your last leg workout. And then you're like, what? And then they're going to say something like, okay, you can get a full workout maybe Monday, Tuesday. And then come Wednesday, Thursday, we're just doing like total upper body pump. And you're like, what? What does that even mean?
It is physically easier. Mateus is chiming in. Thanks, Mateus. Thanks for checking us out again this week. He says he used our tips last week on the calf exercises and improved very much.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Outstanding. Mateus, if you're not going to compete, I wouldn't buy this book, brother. This is strictly competition book. There are other fitness books that will probably help you better, but if you're not going to compete, don't waste your money on it. This is strictly for competing.
Yeah. So yeah, the working out, the intensity gets dialed back. The volume's going to get dialed back. The idea is that towards the mid to end of the week, we just want to flush the muscles full of blood. Yeah. We are not really trying to create trauma, to create damage, to tear anything. We want everything nice and fresh come show day.
Correct. 100% recovered, 100% healed. You just heard her say tiny tears in your muscles. That's what happens when you work out. They grow back bigger. They grow back stronger. We want them already grown back bigger, already stronger. We don't want tiny tears in there anywhere on competition day.
Right. And anytime you have any tiny tears, inflammation. What happens with inflammation? Water. Swelling. And that may not put the water where we want it to put the water. So we definitely don't want any trauma. And I have to fight clients sometimes. I have a lot like, come on, Camille, one more glute workout. Nope. I want to go on the step mill and like do some glutes. And I'm like, please don't. Like we want those glute striations and tie-ins to come out on stage. If they're overtrained, they're not going to come out.
Remember what we said earlier. Trust the process.
Right.
If you don't trust your coach, fire them.
Yeah.
You have to trust what the guidance they're giving you. And if you're doing it yourself, trust the guidance you're giving yourself.
Right.
If you're not, then you're going to be all over the place, especially on peak week.
Yeah. And then typically the cardio regimen won't change, even though the workout is changing, right, and getting a little less intense. The cardio will usually stay in there wherever you had it. I mean, some people are maybe doing a couple days, some are doing 7 days. I don't know. But your cardio typically won't change.
Yeah.
And the reason it's not changing is because if all of a sudden you pulled that cardio out, it's hard to know how the body is going to place and burn that glycogen that you're eating from all those carbs, right? So sometimes, for whatever reason, like I'll give all these carbs to the athlete and they're like, oh, well, I didn't get a chance to do cardio. And it's like, whoa, I gave that to you expecting, you to have that much cardio. So now I just gave you too many carbs based on how much you're burning. So you're going to spill. So it's important to really adhere to the plan and be precise, right? That was the number 3 goal for peak week. Precision.
We're not going to tell you a secret sauce, but there are some things you have to seriously track on peak week. And if you mess any of them up, you're not going to peak as good as you could have.
Absolutely. So definitely some mistakes to avoid. I would say number one thing is introducing new tactics, right? So like if you've been jogging for your cardio and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do stat mill peak week. Like,
you really don't make any changes, big changes on peak week. Don't change your cardio. Don't eat anything you haven't eaten the last 16 weeks. You don't know if it's going to give you diarrhea. You don't know if it's going to bloat you. You don't know if it's going to. All three things you don't want. So don't introduce any kind of new food on peak week either.
Mateus is asking whether the book would be good, maybe, to get the most out of showing your muscles. I would say, yeah, like if you wanted to do a photo shoot, you have some kind of event coming up and you wanted to look really crisp or good.
Anything you need to peak for.
Yeah, you could probably use the techniques in the book.
A photo shoot, a vacation, a honeymoon. That's good point. Good question, Mateus. That's awesome.
And then again, I think we already talked about this, but it's like not the place. Peak week's not the place for last minute fat loss, right?
If you got fat to lose, you're not at peak week.
Right.
Your physique should be 100% ready, and all you're doing is manipulating the water.
Absolutely. So just some practical tips for success and strategies. Like one, consistency. Like if you're going to do anything, be consistent, be precise with it. Like follow the plan that the coach has given you. Please don't change it. Like they're counting on you to do your part and execute it.
The two guys that I lost, they would have done so well if they just peaked correctly. But we talked about the mental anguish. I'm getting smaller. I need to eat. Right. Oh my gosh, I ate too much. I got spillage. Now I need to do 3 extra hours of cardio. No, you don't. Right. And don't do anything without texting me first. Don't do it, then come the next day and say, well, I had to eat 700 extra carbs yesterday because I was shrinking. Right. You're supposed to be shrinking, guy. That's the whole point. We're supposed to flatten you out. We're supposed to deplete you before we carb you up.
Yeah. I mean, and on the backside with the carb up, I've had athletes be like, I'm so bloated. I'm so full. I can't get all of this in. Like, so I just didn't eat it all. It's like, oh, no.
And again, they're not telling you that till the next day, right?
Right. Because I probably could have helped, right? I said, we probably could have just maybe added some dextrose powder or something different to the regimen to get the glycogen in there. So
I like the way Mateus just put it. It's a last touch to the diamond. Well said, brother.
Yeah.
You're cutting that diamond. You're working on it all year long. Peak week, you're just polishing it.
Right.
You're making it shine. You're working on it all year long. Believe me, you are. But peak week, you're just polishing that diamond, making that thing pretty.
Absolutely. And then trial and error, James said it. Like when you are mapping out your competition schedule, factor in some trial and error in your peak week. Yes. Like be ready 4 weeks early so you can really dial it in.
Yes. If it's your first show, be ready 4 weeks early. And if you have a coach not telling you this, you might want to get a different coach. Be ready 4 weeks early so we can practice which peak week strategy to use and which one works best for your body.
Or maybe even plan for multiple shows. I've seen an athlete where they looked okay. Something probably needed to be tweaked for the show. And they turn around like a week, 2 weeks later, and they figured it out and they have nailed it.
I've seen that as well.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely trial and error. You got to practice. So like we said, we have 2 athletes competing in 2 weeks. So this past Saturday when they came into posing, I had my one bikini girl practicing some of the carb up, leading up to that practice. That way I could see. And we were like, okay, this carb source did not have the effect we wanted. So we're going to come back and we're going to try something different next week and see if that will get her to pop out.
True story. Yeah. Happened yesterday.
It happened yesterday. And you just don't want to do what works for everybody, right? So like maybe most people are like, you got to have your rice cakes and your honey, but maybe that doesn't make you pop out the way you want to. Like maybe it's some other carbs that you want to eat, So.
All right. We got a comment from Chakib. I'm not sure I understand what hard fat is. It says, hope you find, I want to ask the rest of the hard fat after losing weight and how to get rid of it. So what I think the question is, when you start leaning out, you start losing weight, it's relatively easy. The more weight you lose, the leaner you get, the harder it gets. And there's a big distinction between lean and contest lean.
Right.
You can look lean with a six-pack, look fantastic on the beach. You're still not stage lean. Not yet. Once you get stage lean, and it is painful and it is extremely hard to get that last bit of fat off. That's why this is an extreme sport, yo.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, it depends how long you've been working on weight loss. So if it's somebody that's been maybe working for, maybe they've been working at it for 12 months and they're losing weight. I actually recommend that you take a month and do a diet break where you go back to eating and maintain for 4 weeks. What's happened is your metabolism probably can't keep up with the rate of loss that you were doing, and it's trying to preserve itself. So it tanks. And so by going into that 4 week or so maintain, you're able to reset it and recover, and then you can start again.
Speed it back up. Mateus has another great question. Stage lean 5%. You're close, but we'd like to see a 3%.
And I think there's a difference between male and female on what that might look like as well.
Good point. And hashtag 3% body fat is not healthy. That's why we dial you in. That's why it's called peaking, because you're not going to maintain 3% body fat, and you shouldn't maintain 3% body fat because it's not a healthy level of body fat.
Right. All right. So those are the main tips. Like I said, when you start going into peak week, you start to doubt yourself. Your physique probably will look worse most of the time before it looks better.
It's going to.
And then out of nowhere, your skin's tight, your muscles are full, they're defined, it is peaked.
And your coach should tell you, listen, you're going to look worse before you look better. Do not freak out. Do not say I'm shrinking and eat 700 carbs and then tell me the next day when you show up, right? Trust the process. Trust your coach. If you don't, then get another coach.
Yeah, and your coach should be tracking you very closely. Like I am always asking my for check-in photos every single morning, the days like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And they're like, why do I have to keep sending you these photos? It's like, I'm looking. I'm looking for spillage. I'm looking for too flat, because by the time I get to Friday morning, it is the last, it's not too late. Friday morning is the last chance to make a change. If we've spilled over, it's my last chance to pull back your carbs, and it's my last chance to put more carbs in to fill you out. When it comes Saturday morning, if you've spilled over, it is too late. There is nothing that we're going to do to get that crispness back.
Yes. And if you cut water, there's nothing you can do to fill yourself back in.
Right.
I don't care how many carbs you eat. If you don't eat them with water, they're not going to work. They're not going to fill you in. You've probably seen the pictures of guys on stage that just look stringy, flat, like there's muscles there, but they're not full. That's what happens when you cut your water
And
out.
what happens towards either the end of the show or the next morning after they start drinking water again? They look better the next day, and you're like, man.
How many times have you seen that on social media? The next morning, they're taking pictures in the mirror and going, wow, what happened? I look better on the day after the contest than on contest day. And it's because they drank the water and they went out and had food that night, and the coach steered them wrong somewhere during their prep.
Yeah. So we got a question about how many months should I take to bulk and cut?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. Building muscle takes time, y'all. There's no easy science. I don't care what supplement or what you're taking. At the end of the day, it's going to take time. And the worst thing you can do is shortchange yourself. So, my personal opinion is you want to take closer to the, full calendar year to bulk.
100% agree. This sport only has 2 seasons, bulking and cutting. That's it. So if you're not cutting, you should be bulking.
Right.
And let's hashtag this. Your bulk weight's 20 pounds over your stage weight.
And not for a small female. I would say, 10 pounds max for a small female.
Right. So when we're saying bulk, once you hit that 20 pounds, 10 pounds, you go to maintain.
Yeah, bulk doesn't mean fat, y'all.
You don't keep bulk. You don't keep gaining. You don't keep gaining indefinitely. You'll just get fat. Stop at your 20 pounds over and maintain then until you cut.
Right. But that's a hard thing. I think a lot of athletes, they get into this vicious cycle where they just want to do shows year after year after year, or multiple. They'll put like 4 shows in a year and they're like 3-4 months apart. They're they're staying really lean for too long, and it's just killing their chances for muscle hypertrophy.
So in the industry, we call these trophy collectors. Their physique is decent, but it never gets better.
Right.
They can go to local shows and win the local shows, and they continue to do so every single year. But the second they step up the nationals, they get crushed.
Right.
So these people just stay at the local level and compete week after week after week, collecting trophy, but never get better. I don't get it. I don't understand it. To me, you'd want to be the best, so you'd want to improve and do good at nationals,
right.
as opposed to staying at the local level and keep getting trophy and local trophy.
I mean, and I could just speak from experience, right? Like I was competing once a calendar year, which means I was probably bulking for maybe like 8 months out of the year, cutting for 4 months out of the year. And I kept getting to the national level, and it's like, man, my hamstrings and glutes are just hammering on the stage, right? Like I need to do something to put some serious mass on. And so I've taken the last 3 years off to work on that goal. And you better believe I'm hammering legs.
Yeah. Listen, man, my first time at nationals was an eye opener. I was not ready to be at nationals. I should have stayed at the local level. I didn't go back to the nationals until 13 years later. I won my pro card 13 years later, but 13 years prior, I should have never went to nationals. I won my weight class in bodybuilding because classic physique didn't exist back then. So I went to nationals as a bodybuilder, light heavyweight bodybuilder, and I finished 6th place.
Yeah.
But the 5 ahead of me were definitely next level, and I was nowhere near their physique at that time. I had to put another 13 years into training in order to hang at the national level.
Right.
That's the kind of time we're talking about. That's the kind of time it takes. And over those 13 years, I don't think I ever competed more than once a year, except for the 2 times I did nationals.
Yeah.
So it was bulk all year long until contest cut. Right. Bulk all year long until contest cut.
Right.
That's pretty much the sport.
All right. Yeah. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, y'all. So you got to put the effort into it.
There's no off season in this sport. You know, traditional sport, you get an off season. You can breathe. You can relax a little bit. Not this one. You're 24/7, 365, baby.
That's right.
And you're always chasing those gains. And if you're not, your competition is. Believe that.
So, you know, let's just recap. Remember, like peak week is the culmination of your entire bodybuilding season. So you want to make sure that you're putting the level of precision into it that is going to give you the best result. So 100% effort, y'all. Mm-hmm. And definitely trust the process and trust your coach.
Yeah. Reed Ramirez. That's a great question, Reed. He's been bulking for over a year, definitely plateaued in progress. So I'm assuming you don't have a contest date in mind. So you shouldn't do, you should reset. That is a good idea. You should do like a month cut, diet down for a month, maybe 2.
Right.
And then get back to it, right back to building, right back to bulking. That's if you don't have a contest date in mind. If you do have a contest date in mind, then you're going to power through until you start that cut for that contest date.
Yeah, I want to take Reed's question another way too. So he says, I've been bulking for just over a year and definitely plateaued in terms of progressive overload. So Reed, like at some point, depending on how much you're taxing your nervous system, you might want to take a break from that and maybe go like a higher volume, like higher rep, and train that way for a little bit, or something different with your split to allow yourself to recover and then come back to it. But I actually have a really great series. It probably won't drop till May time, but we talk about like, how do you get through like a sticking point in your bench or bicep curls when you've been progressively overloading and you just can't go up anymore. So hopefully we'll get those tips out to you soon.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are you plateaued at body weight, physique weight, or strength, or what?
Right.
Because you might just need a rest.
Yeah.
We shot that video this morning. It's not going to drop till May. But the biggest thing with when you hit a plateau is you're overtrained. That is normally the number one cause of that. And Mateus is chiming in one more time. He's thinking of himself as a machine. I love that.
I love it.
I love that. You are now a machine. You don't eat for flavor. You eat for function.
Yeah.
You eat the foods that are going to be the best for your body, make you recover the best, make you build the best. You're going to get up and work out because you're a machine. You're not even going to think about, I don't want to work out. I'm a machine. I'm going to go in and get there and get it.
Right.
Awesome, Mateus. I love that.
Awesome. Awesome. Any last thoughts on peak week before we close out?
Just remember, and I'm repeating this again, it's physically the easiest week. Mentally and emotionally, it's probably the hardest. Listen to your coach, trust the process. If you go off kilter somewhere, you might ruin your whole chance for that show. And coach should probably say, we're folding this peak week and we're picking another show because you just messed up your peak week strategy.
A lot of times, if the coach has a really good relationship with you, they'll know if you're highly susceptible to doing that, and they will try to consider that when giving you instructions as well.
Yeah, again, coach is going to give you a heads up, or at least they should give you a heads up. You're going to look worse before you look better, so realize that's coming.
Right.
Biggest something I should take to keep my body healthy? Ooh, that's a loaded question, Chiquita. That loaded question, baby. There's a ton of supplements out there. We're about to check off live here, but if you go through our live videos, we went over a whole bunch of supplements: protein, creatine, EAAs, arginine, BCAAs. Check those videos out. They will explain to you all you need to know about supplements.
I feel like there's even a video where we did talk about if you could only take one supplement the rest of your life, what would it be? So look on that playlist. I bet it's in there.
I believe you do. I know the answer.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys. This channel is absolutely for you. Yes. So please drop us some comments. Let us know what you'd like to learn more about. And we're here every Sunday, 12 Eastern, for you guys to ask any questions in real time.
Yes. And anybody checked in live today, we appreciate it. We love y'all. Much, much appreciated for checking us out, taking out time of your day to check us out live.
Bye, everyone.